Okay, so this is just going to be a blank screen, a image or something while I talk about this. Essentially, I've been browsing online for theories about Severance season 2, like where is it going to go in season 2? Because I have my ideas on it and I wanted to see if they lined up with other people's. And well, I found something that I disagree and agree on at certain points. Essentially, this theory goes that the innies will be rebooted and they won't remember anything. And that it'll be the innies trying to break in this time because we have Mark, who basically is going to find out that his wife is still alive. So, it's definitely a thing. But essentially, the thing I disagree with is the idea of rebooting the characters. It's a narratively dissatisfying way to address character enlightenment as a writer. Like, step out of the actual narrative, get out of the weeds and minutiae, and view it as a story. You have characters who have just obtained knowledge, which pulled them out of ignorance. They've been enlightened. As a result of that enlightenment, they are all changed and grow, most likely, usually. If you are a writer, you have two options from that point. Allow the characters to grow from there, or wipe away their enlightenment. There is nothing satisfying about the latter path. It's the lazy way out. Allowing them to remain enlightened forces them to grow. It changes their goals, gives them depth and complexity, etc. Even antagonists are forced to grow as a result. If they reboot the innies, well, what story do we have then? Well, certainly not any interesting ones. I guess we see all the innies meet for the first time. Is that compelling? Won't you be sitting there just itching for them to deal with what it is that they learned? Because here's why memory wipes and reboots don't really work that well. You can't wipe the audience's memories. We remember what happened, and unless your story is about androids who are trying to uncover their memory after they've been wiped and rebooted multiple times, well, that show's already been done. OMG, Callier, why the fuck? Audiences don't care about your writer's bullshit. Oh, they don't, do they? Okay, then. Well, why don't we examine this in practice? As in Severance Season 1 itself. Dylan has his OTC, sees his closet, and learns he has a son. His innie is enlightened. Now, as I said before, the writers had two options. Tell a story of reckoning with enlightenment or wipe the enlightenment away. They did not do the latter. I can't stress this enough. Dylan goes to work the next day a completely changed man. He no longer gives a shit about the perks. He doesn't even leave his desk for the MD until he attacks Milchick. He's no longer the office horn dog who pokes fun at everything and is relentlessly hitting on Miss Casey. What comes out of all of that? Well, nothing short of the innie revolt. They all learn about the OTC, they commandeer it, and they learn about their lives, and shit hits the fan. All of that from Dylan seeing his closet and his kid in a brief 5 to 10 seconds of enlightenment. It is the most critical moment in the third act of the season. Now, let's examine what would have happened if they had wiped his memory, or rebooted him, or whatever after his OTC, which we can't just gloss this over, would have been precisely what they had done if they had time to do it. Dylan has his OTC, gets to work and asks about it, and Milchick is like, come with me, Shazamo, rebooted. What's the story after that? Well, the innies never learn that they could have woken up in the outside world. Like, that is something that only Dylan knew as a result of his OTC experience. So even though Innie Mark knows he has Grainer's key card, he won't have a compelling reason to use it. And even if he did, when they went to the security office, they were only in there for less than a minute. They'll have no idea what to look for because they have no idea there's such a thing as OTC. And that means the final episode is not them outside in their lives. Irving never learns about all his research and who he is. Helly doesn't learn she's Helena and it was all a PR stunt. Mark doesn't learn that Miss Casey is Gemma or about Cobel's subterfuge. You know, all of the interesting stuff. None of it would have happened, and we can hardly say that the story would have been better off. So they're not just going to reboot them next season because all of the stories that unfold from their enlightenment are that much more interesting than the alternative. It's just a lazy resolution to a narrative problem that the writers wrote themselves into. On purpose. Like, this is just a bigger point in the story itself. Most fans' biggest fear is like the writers will somehow fuck it all up and the show will turn out to be the next Lost. I have no fear of this, but I'll tell you this much. If the next season begins with the Innies being rebooted, you can bank on it be the next Lost for sure. The issue with that show is that they put all the effort into the compelling mystery shit with no idea how to resolve it, no idea what the answers were. If season 2 starts with a reboot, it means they didn't think past the finale or have a plan for resolving the Innie Enlightenment, and rather than figure out an interesting resolution, they opted for the lazy resolution. So they could just recycle season 1, basically. That's what Memory Wipes and Reboot suggests, that there's nothing interesting about that, and none of us should be rooting for it. Like, we should be actively pleading for them not to do that. We all should just accept that things like clean slate and such are subversive references in the same way that the break room does not mean what it normally means, because if they can wipe memories and reboot characters, and we're just kind of fucked. Sorry, but I'll die on this hill. I get no joy out of hoping that memory wipe reboot theories are wrong. I just want people to want us to all be somehow right with hoping that it's wrong. You know. But memory wipe would be jumping the shark after a single season. Like, maybe if there's going to be more than 2 seasons, they can do it later. Because it would, it would make sense. It's just really interesting. It's just really interesting to think about this show like that, and yeah. Yep. Cool. Okay, so after all that ranting about what I disagreed with, what do I agree with? About that whole theory I mentioned. The Audis breaking in, absolutely. It's not just the refiner Audis, but maybe the real Seth Milchick, if you want to talk about tinfoil hat theories. I'm totally a believer in the Milchick's a perma any theory. He'll definitely show up at some point. If Milchick is a full-time Innie who's avoided severed barriers so he doesn't switch, it means that Seth Milchick drove to work one day and has never been heard from in 3 years. What's he gonna think happened? It's crazy. I think Devin will try and connect the dots about Gemma, but Mark, all of them really, clearly had some reason to believe Gemma was dead, so I don't think he's going to be so quick to believe that she's alive. For one thing, his body just got hijacked without his consent. He chooses to go to work each day, and each time he switches to conscious choice, he's never had his Innie being the one making the decision, and I imagine he's going to be livid. He's not going to believe that it's true. He's going to be pissed that no one could tell it wasn't him, etc., etc. So I'm betting at least a third of the season is going to be convincing him to go back to work. I mean, recall that he had made the choice to actually quit just before the OTC was triggered. The fact that his body was hijacked is not going to make him eager to go back to Lumen. In fact, I imagine it'll be the opposite. I also bet that he'll be apprehensive about being reintegrated because of what happened to Petey, who basically served as proto-Mark and his cautionary tale. My little theory is that he isn't convinced to go back or get reintegrated until he meets Helly, who I bet gets out into the real world again somehow, and she's like, yeah, you're kind of my little work boyfriend on the inside. We even kissed, you totally liked it. Shame you're a miserable drunk out here, though. Your voice is different, somehow worse. Hey, why do you have a ripped up picture of Miss Casey, the wellness counselor? Is ripping things up just something you do? Maybe you're more like my Mark than I give you credit for, something like that. I'd imagine Cobell gets another job at Lumen, but she'll be on a short leash. Maybe in order to get her job and continue whatever scheme she was playing at, she had to get severed. That might shed light on why Irving worked at Lumen for 6 years and then got severed himself. Maybe it's something management has to do in lieu of being demoted. That would be crazy. Season 2 might actually begin with Cobell waking up on the table with new refiners alongside her and a new administrator. Might be that Irving is the only one they don't know has woken up and he ends up going back to work with 3 new refiners around him. Like, season 2, so yeah, please. I cannot wait. January 17th cannot get here fast enough. I'm just, this show is so good. Show is so good.